Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Caregiver Connections for 2022 for the OHSU Parkinson Center. I'm Lisa Mann, Education Director and Team Care Coordinator, as well as one of the nurses at the OHSU Parkinson Center. And we just want to welcome you to this couple hours of time for you and understanding Parkinson's better and how you can manage the amazing stuff that you always run into and have to kind of juggle. You are our heroes. You're on the front lines. You know your loved ones the best, and we count on you so much, as does your person with Parkinson's disease. And yet we also want to kind of give back to you a little bit because it is such a hard job. And while we're going to be talking about very challenging topics today in Parkinson's disease, we do want to make sure that we're answering what your questions are and your needs are in addressing these things, as well as giving you a little bit of time to kind of understand that you're not alone out there. Not only are we here at the OHSU Parkinson Center, but you have many other peers out there who are also going through the same thing, and lots of wonderful organizations in our community to help support you. I hope you did get this special little intro packet that Jen, who is our education director, put together. It's a sensory packet. You should have received it hopefully before the start of this program, and you'll learn much more about that a little later from my colleague Jenny Bedrek, who is our other nurse here. So I don't want to take too much time kind of doing the intro because we have some really great information to share with you today. But I did want to let you know, and if we can go to the next slide, kind of what our agenda is. And that is that we're going to be talking about, after this welcome, we're going to have Dr. Allison Lindbauer present on cognitive impairment and care partner burden and some of the research that she's been doing in that. We'll have a question and answer period with her, as we will with our panel later. And you've already submitted some amazing questions that hopefully we'll get to as many as possible during those times. And before we go on our break in the middle of the program, we are going to have Jenny kind of walk through this wonderful sensory packet and give you a little more information about that and how to best capitalize on it. And then we're going to be joined by our wonderful panel, two expert caregivers who have been where you are, will be advising us, as well as our social worker, Rachel Rushing. So lots going on. If you have questions that come up during the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat. Those are going to be relayed to us. And again, we're going to try to address as many as possible when we do the Q&A period. So now I'd like to introduce our expert in the program today, Dr. Allison Lindbauer, who has been with OHSU for some years now. She's collaborated with us on different projects with Parkinson's disease, but she's also an associate professor at the OHSU Latent Aging and Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. She is a nationally certified gerontological nurse practitioner and scientist, and has been doing just amazing things in her research to better understand the impact of dementia on our caregivers, too often such an area that is neglected. And obviously with Parkinson's disease, we have a significant portion of people who over the full course of the disease might also exhibit dementia and aspects of cognitive impairment. So I would like to introduce to you Allison.
Thank you, Lisa, for the gracious introduction, and so nice to see everybody today. I understand that, oh, there's my screen, great, perfect. So today I'd like to talk about Parkinson's diseases, so things like Parkinson's and Lewy Body, and dementia, cognitive changes, and talk about kind of how we go about figuring out if that actually is the case for a family. And then for many families who live with dementia, no matter what kind it is, the person with dementia and honestly the caregiver often have what we call behavioral symptoms. So things like feeling angry or irritable or not taking medications or being inappropriate in public. All of these symptoms are hard on families. And so I'll give you an idea of how we manage that. So I would like to start out with just a quick introduction. I really like this slide. I'm not sure if you can see, but it looks to me like Yosemite in the background. There's lots of crags and valleys and trees. And this is kind of how I perceive dementia, no matter what kind. There's beauty in it. I've seen families grow really close. I've seen people learn about themselves, develop, like I said, the meaningful relationships with people they would have never met, and develop a sense of meaning in their lives that they didn't know they could even reach. Like Yosemite, it's hard, it's craggy, it's difficult, it's steep, it's dirty at times. And also like Yosemite, you wouldn't go here without a map. You wouldn't go here without thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to get there? You wouldn't go here alone. You would take a friend, probably many friends. If you're like me, you'll take an assistive device like a walking pole, and you'll take nourishment to help you keep going. And so through today's slide set, what I'd like you to do is think about how can this information that I'm giving you today address those things? How do I give you a map? How do I find you friends? How do we nourish you over this long process? All right, so first, just as Lisa said, I'm with the Latent Aging and Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. We're one of 31 NIH-funded centers around the nation and the only one in Oregon. We do research in a number of areas. We do clinical trials that test medications. We do our caregiving work. We do technology work, neuroimaging. It's a very busy place. We also provide evaluation treatment for people who have concerns about cognitive changes. And this is my email and my phone number if you'd like to reach out. So today we'll review the characteristics of dementia and discuss the unique challenges that families with Parkinson's disease face when thinking about dementia. And then we'll have a little bit of question and answer time. I probably don't need to tell you this. You know what Parkinson's disease is. And people obviously have motor symptoms and non-motor symptoms. Lewy body is similar disease process, but in Lewy body, the first sign of that things are not quite right could be sleep problems, hallucinations, not necessarily the tremors or the stiffness that we see in Parkinson's disease. Whatever it is, whether it's Parkinson's, Lewy body, Alzheimer's, vascular, whatever type of dementia it is, when we see a family who have concerns about cognitive changes, we are very careful to apply this criteria to see if they meet the criteria for dementia. And if they do, how can we help them? And if they don't, how can we support them and give them information? So when I meet a family who has some concerns about memory, we of course do a lot of testing. We ask them to do several memory assessments, judgment assessments, behavior assessments, and then we figure out if it fits the pattern. A person who is diagnosed with dementia has to have cognitive impairment that interferes with daily function at work or at usual activities. It has to be a decline from the previous level of functioning. So if say somebody is a bad cook, they've never been a great cook. If they come to me and the family says, oh, he's not a good cook, but it's no change, that's not going to concern me. If the person was a chef and then now can't even scramble eggs, that's worrisome. It also, in order to have dementia, whatever the symptoms are, they cannot be explained by other things like depression or delirium, which often can make it a little difficult to tease out what's going on. So you have to have some memory trouble that interferes with daily function that's a change from the past. In addition, there have to be two other things that fit in our recipe. Either you lose the ability to acquire and retain new information. You may have difficulty reasoning and handling complex tasks, or your judgment may be poor. There may be changes in visual spatial abilities, impaired language, or change in personality or behavior that is really different from the past. So along with the top level, we also need to identify at least two of those in the bottom level. And it isn't as simple as it looks. It's very complex and drawn out experience. But when it boils down to is this is what we look for when we're worried about a family who has memory trouble. I know that all of you are you're not living with Alzheimer's disease, but I just wanted to point out a little bit of the differences because I think that's what's really important for your group. Alzheimer's disease is disease progression is constant and slow. So it's like a ball rolling slowly down a hill. It can be bumpy, it can be uncomfortable. These families have a really hard time because it's just constant and it doesn't stop. Lewy body dementia is like a bouncing ball. Okay, so there is decline over time. Oh, excuse me. But there are fluctuations. And that's one thing we really listen for in the assessment. And the fluctuations can be hour to hour, day to day. It's very disorienting for families to have their family member be really on top of their game, the first part of the day, but in the evening, just really not able to concentrate, not able to engage. That's kind of a classic Lewy body pattern. I'm not going to get into this too much because I know you have experts available to you. And again, Parkinson's also has kind of that bouncing ball quality. When we think about the progression of Parkinson's disease, now Lewy body is a slightly different diagnosis, but Lewy body is diagnosed early on. So oftentimes the symptoms of sleep issues, daily fluctuations, and hallucinations would start before a tremor or before rigidity. Parkinson's dementia tends to occur much later in the disease process, and they already have those motor and non-motor symptoms, the tremors, the bradophrenia, the difficulty processing information. They may have falls, they may have tremors, but they may be cognitively doing very, very well. And then later on in disease may develop symptoms of dementia. Not everybody with Parkinson's gets dementia, but many do. And that's kind of the cold, hard truth. And we want you to be ready. So this is my map for you. This is the map of the craggy mountain. One of the things that's so challenging, and this is really my area of interest, is how do we help families get across those cliffs and valleys and get through the tough times? And so I'll take a little time to talk about that. But first, I just wanted to point out that taking care of somebody with Parkinson's or Lewy body, it's very difficult. Anybody with dementia, of course, is hard, but these families tend to have a lot of troubles with the fluctuations, the energy levels day to day. The hallucinations can be kind of disorienting and confusing. There's a lot of mood issues and sleep, as well as mobility. So these are really hard concepts for families that have to deal with when they have to deal with Parkinson's disease and dementia or Lewy body dementia. So who are the people that take care of these families? Well, as Lisa pointed out, we are truly grateful for you because the value of the care that unpaid caregivers provide in Oregon alone is astronomical. You're saving the state, frankly. There are about 70,000 people in Oregon with a dementia and 155,000 family caregivers to take care of them. In 2020, they provided 257 million hours of care, and this care was valued at 5.3 billion, and that's B with a billion with a B only in 2020. So it's a lot, and so again, we are grateful. On the bigger picture, about 21 million people in the US provide unpaid care, and up to 74% of family care partners in the US are women. And it's not an easy job, is it? This is a study that was done through the National Caregiving Alliance. And to be clear, this was a study in which they polled all care partners, so not specific to dementia. But still, the numbers are concerning. 36% report high emotional stress, 17% report high physical strain, a quarter have difficulty caring for their own health. And this last bullet is why I do what I do. 30% of those who care for somebody that lives with them feel lonely or alone. And that's just not okay. We can't have you feeling lonely when we can help. I gave this talk, a similar talk yesterday, and I apologize if for those of you who may have heard the same talk, but we did a poll, and this was with the Parkinson's and Movement organizations, the national organization, and we had 100 people at that talk, and over 50% of them reported high emotional stress, and over 30% reported high physical strain, which makes a lot of sense. This is hard work. The other thing I wanted to point out, and I'm mindful of the time, but I just wanted to point out that not everybody loves the person they care for. There may be some strife, there may be some frustration, there may be a history that makes it difficult to love the person, and they may care for them out of a sense of duty or because it's what's expected of them. Up to 25% of caregivers we know experience some type of verbal, physical, or sexual abuse by the parent that they're caring for now. So the abuse was when the caregiver was younger, and now they take care of their parent. We also know that about 30% of people with dementia abuse their care partner. I'm not sure if abuse is the right word, but there are times when the person with dementia will yell or say mean things to their care partner or try to hit them. And in many cases, it's reciprocated. If this is the case for you, there's a wonderful social worker at both at Parkinson's Resources of Oregon and at this center, and this is something that you should be talking about. We know that people who are in this situation and providing care are at much higher risk for burnout. I'm going to skip along, but you'll have these slides, and this is something that I worry about too, as many care partners aren't really asked, how are you doing? And we know that caregiving is risky. One of the reasons caregiving is risky is because of the unpredictability and of the behaviors that people with dementia often exhibit. And actually, I'm going to correct myself. It's not just the people with dementia, it's the whole family that exhibit behaviors that make life stressful sometimes. So what do we mean? What do I mean by behaviors? Well, behaviors are tools that we all use to help us communicate. And most of the time, we use words with behaviors to deliver a clear message. So smiling, clapping, frowning, hugging, those are all behaviors that help us say, oh, I'm thrilled to see you, I'm angry at you, I don't want to be here. There are also, behaviors that have some pain with them. As you can see by this picture, this woman's jaw is clenched, her brow is furrowed, her hands are clenched. She is clearly frustrated. And then this little person is sulking and probably pretty mad. We don't need a lot of words here to figure out what's going on. We can tell. But the problem with dementia, and specifically with Parkinson's disease, is the person with dementia can't always tell us what they want or need. They may have troubles with hypophonia or finding the right words or expressing a clear thought that involves stringing words together. So they may use their behaviors to communicate a need. And that's where we do our work. The other point, of course, is that as caregivers, we often feel angry, frustrated, tired, spent. And so we use behaviors to express how we feel. I like to use the ABC approach to behavior. This helps break down what's going on, analyze it, and help families understand the details and figure out how to deal with a problem. Let me see, I'm going to the next slide. So actually, I'm going to stay here for a minute. In the ABC approach, we start actually with the B. Think of the B as the top of the pyramid. We want to know what behavior is it that's distressing to the family. So for example, let's say somebody's refusing to take a bath. You tell them, you know, you need a bath, it's been a week. And the person says, no, I don't, I just took a bath yesterday. And then the caregiver will say something like, no, you didn't, I was here, you didn't take a bath, and you smelled funny, you need a bath. No, I took a bath yesterday. You get the idea, right? So what we ask families to do is take that behavior and give us all the details you can about it. We want you to be a detective. What do you see and hear? And we ask caregivers to step back, remove themselves a little bit out of the picture so they can really see what's going on. When does the behavior occur? What time of day? Who else is there? Where does it happen? What's everybody's mood? Did everybody eat dinner? Have they had a glass of wine? Just all the little things you can think of that happens. What happened? What is that behavior? What is going on? And also talking about, you know, does the person yell? No, I just took a shower, or do they just kind of curl up and say, I don't want to? What do they say? How do you know they don't want to shower? And then talk about the activators. What happened before them? Were they tired? Is it nighttime? Is it daytime? And then we ask people to think about what happens after the behavior. The C part, for me personally, isn't quite as helpful as understanding the actual behavior and the activators. But sometimes if you think about what happened afterward, you can kind of get a hint as to what's going on. So oftentimes families will come to me and say things like, I don't know what's going on. You know, every afternoon at 5, he gets really, really, really cranky, and it's really hard to deal with. And it just kind of seems to end after dinner. And so for those of you who are following, it kind of makes sense. Like, well, the consequences, that person was miserable and then they ate, the consequences, they felt better. So it has something to do with food. And maybe the crankiness is their way, their behavior in saying, I'm hungry. So here's an example for you. Andrea is Ted's wife, and Ted has Lewy Body disease. And about 4 times a week, Ted tells Andrea that she needs to cook extra food for their company. This makes Andrea feel angry. She knows that Ted is referring to the little people in his hallucinations, but he just doesn't put that together. He just doesn't quite grasp it. This makes Andrea grumpy. This is her behavior, right? She's probably frowning, she's probably stewing. So she has a glass of wine, or maybe 1 or 2 or 3 while making dinner. And it's just really hard for her to cope with. And so what behavior she wants to change is she wants Ted to stop asking her to make dinner for the company. Now, for those of you who are experienced, you know that telling Ted over and over that the hallucinations aren't real isn't really going to help very much. So we asked Andrea, take some time, step back, look, listen, and think about Ted's behaviors. Notice what happens prior to his request. What's that day like? Was it a day where he was home all day and he's just kind of isolated and lonely and he thinks, gosh, it'd be fun to have dinner? Or was it a day when there was just too much going on and he feels kind of overwhelmed and the hallucinations are really prominent? And then we asked Andrea to notice how she and Ted feel after the dinner that's just the two of them and not the whole party. One of the things we ask people to do is once they know the general outline of the ABCs is to start brainstorming solutions and be really creative. So in this situation, Andrea is beginning to realize that A, she's demonstrating behaviors too. This is not just about her husband. B, she knows she can't control them. C, she needs to brainstorm ways that she can cope. So she recognizes that she probably isn't going to change this hallucination. She's probably not going to change his request to make dinner for all these people. So she's thinking of different ways to help her cope. And she's brainstorming and she's calling Ted's sister. So if you think back to our mountain scene, our craggy mountain scene, you're not going to go over that mountain scene alone. You're going to ask for help. And this is a perfect example of somebody seeking help. And one thing we would tell Andrea is not only think about how your sister can help you or Ted's sister can help you, but also maybe Ted's sister just has some ideas. If you sat down with her and penciled it out, she might have some good ideas on how to deal with this. We tell people next to make a plan. So together, Andrea and Ted's sister decide that maybe the sister can make a dinner once a week. So Andrea can just get out of the house so she gets a break. She doesn't have to figure out how to tell Ted not to deal with all these hallucinations. Excuse me. The other thing we teach Andrea to do is listen to Ted with respect and acknowledge that, yes, I know there's 20 or 30 people in the room and you care about them and you want them to feel good about being in the house. But I can't do that tonight. And then we ask our caregivers to comfort. I love you. You're important to me. You know what? I do have dinner going. Let's have you watch the Olympics for a couple of minutes. So find some diversion so the person that's having the hallucinations can give their brain a break. So it may be watching TV, it may be working a puzzle, it may be petting the dog, any distraction to help get them out of that rut that makes them think that he so desperately needs to feed the people in his home. The other thing is we recognize that not all our solutions will work, but we don't know if they're not going to work if people don't try it. So you have to try it. So once you make a plan, then you try it and see what happens. And if it does work, great. If it doesn't, you go back to the table, you scribble around it, and you figure out a different plan. As soon as you've got a good plan that's working and it seems to be going really well, you or your family member will change and a new problem or a new issue will come up. And so you already have this recipe. You can apply it to anything or to anybody to address newer problems. Because Parkinson's and other dementias, it's all about change, right? Everything changes. As soon as you have it figured out, something new comes along. This is a shameless promotion. If any of you are interested in continuing this work with us, we're looking for families to join our study. This is an NIH-funded study, and I should say it up front that this is where I got the money. And this is for families in the moderate to later stages of dementia who are dealing with behaviors that are distressing to them. You're welcome to call us and we can talk it over. There's also a website that we have here, telestella.org, where you can learn more. So just to review, dementia does occur in people with Parkinson's. It can be late stage of Parkinson's, or it could be early stage with Lewy body. It's very real and it's very difficult. It is hard on caregivers, and we need to make sure that we take care of the people that do that care. And there are strategies that we can employ to help people address the behaviors that may be adding to that burden. So thank you. If you're interested in any of this, feel free to give us a call. That's our phone number. And if you're interested in any of the work we do, this is our email, adresearch@ohsu.edu. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'd love to have a conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Allison, for giving us all that information. It's a lot to cover in a short period of time, I know. So we do have lots of questions.
Good.
And I'm going to jump right in and ask you one that I think is really a challenging one for most people. And that is, if you are like an adult child helping care for a person who has Parkinson's disease or one of these other things, and start to see that there are cognitive changes occurring, or even if it's your spouse, how do you kind of broach the topic to, introduce that to the person who is showing these signs? And
wow, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
Every family is different, right? What I found to be most successful is when there's honesty mixed with some compassion. And when you're living through this and trying to make sense of it, it's very, very difficult. But I try to be as honest and as clear as you can. I've noticed there are some changes in your thinking. I'm worried. I love you. I want to go down this path with you together. Let's get an assessment. The person with dementia, or even with cognitive changes, not necessarily dementia, may say something like, I'm fine. It's not a problem. Don't worry. I'm fine. I don't need an assessment. I don't want an assessment. I don't want to go into the office and have somebody hide a quarter in a drawer and ask me where it is. So there may be a lot of responses. And I think the hard part is that when a person has cognitive change, they also lose some insight. And so they just may not have the insight or the understanding that this is occurring. So then what you can do is flip it around and make it all about you. Mom, I know you're fine. I think you're brilliant. I'm just really anxious, and I can't get a sense of peace until we do this. Could you just do it for me? I mean, we'll go in, we'll get an assessment, and we'll just figure it out, and that would make me feel so much better. So if you can make it about you, that can help, because then they feel like they're helping you. But if you can be honest, do. I have had families who don't really tell them anything. They just come in and get an assessment. And sometimes that works and sometimes it backfires. But to your person's question, it's so important to get a diagnosis, because once you get a diagnosis, then you as a family can get the support you need, and your family member can start doing more proactive things to help.
All right, thank you. So this kind of also goes with it in a little bit different way. How, talking about advanced planning and introducing that topic might help serve to kind of hopefully start to address this much earlier than it may come up, when you actually see it at being.
Yeah, I think advanced care planning is really very, very smart. And I think in some ways, the medical profession hasn't been very good about encouraging people to think far, far, far ahead. But it's really important to plan ahead, especially in my world where people do have cognitive problems. We want to hear how they're doing. We want to hear what their wishes are while they can still communicate with us clearly. We know that when families do communicate about advanced care ideas and plans, that the caregivers feel less guilt and grief when the person with the disease dies. So using the advanced care planning tool can help facilitate that conversation.
Mhm.
If you have Medicare, every year you're entitled to an annual wellness exam. And as part of that exam, that clinician is supposed to check your memory. Now, which test they use isn't that dictated, so they may not use a very thorough one. But if you can say during that exam, this is what concerns me, then they can move forward and do a more thorough exam.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. And this kind of gets to, you mentioned caregiver guilt. We actually have a lot of the questions kind of focus on that, and this idea that they, how do I give myself grace to determine how much of a caregiver role I'm going to take, and how do I, when I'm feeling like I need a break, kind of broach that subject in order to say, well, I am of value. I do need time off, and yet I feel guilty because I feel like my loved one needs me more than what my needs. So they kind of needs.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. The guilt is so prevalent and so common. And just as a note, the other thing I do see is a lot of shame. People are ashamed about what their family member is doing, and they don't understand that what's going on is really quite normal. But let's talk about guilt for a minute. I kind of breezed through one of the slides that is, I think, probably one of the more important ones. Hang on just a minute. I'm just going to go back and share this. So as a care partner, you are responsible for caring for two people, your person who has the disease process and yourself. Caregiving is risky business. People who care for somebody with memory trouble and or Parkinson's experience all of these: depression, grief, high blood pressure. They're more vulnerable to infections, blood sugar vacillation, sleep disturbances, and somewhat shockingly, memory problems. So if you want to be the person that walks this path with your family member with dementia, you need to take care of yourself so you can continue to walk that path. Because if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't give yourself breaks, it'll rebound. You'll get sick, you'll get high blood pressure, you'll be anxious, you'll be depressed. And then you couldn't take care of that person as well as you'd like to now. So take that guilt, put it in a brown box, close the box, put a whole bunch of duct tape around it, and put it in the shelf and get it out of your life. It doesn't have a role here. You do have to take care of yourself. You do have to find time for yourself, or else your health will be affected. And if your family doesn't, your family may not understand that, your friends may not understand that, but if you need some support, definitely call your social worker and figure out how you can get breaks in your life.
Okay, thank you, Allison. I know that there was one question as well. We have, adult children who really don't ever see exactly what's going on or the burden of it. There's so many things, in the late of the day and in the night that the caregiver has to deal with. Do you have suggestions for kind of educating the family on what they may be going through?
Yeah, that's a great point. And Lisa, how many times have we heard families, caregivers say something like, oh, I don't want to bother my kids. They're really busy. I don't want them to have to, this is the time to bother. This is when you get to be bothersome. That's your privilege. By doing all of this care, in exchange, you get to bother your family. And this is also, remember a couple of minutes ago, we were talking about what you tell your family members where you're concerned about a a problem, this is also where you're really honest with your family, with your kids. Adult kids, you know, we just don't get it. And if you don't live it and you don't hear it, you think mom and dad are fine because they say they're fine. And you think, okay, they're fine. But the reality is they're not. And so you do have to sit down with them and be very, very honest about what's going on. The other thing that I suggest is have them come and take a shift for a couple of hours so they get a full picture of what's going on. And then there was one other thought I had back there. Oh, you know what the research tells us? Is that when more family members, friends and family members get involved, it gives them a sense of meaning and depth in their lives. So by not asking them for their help, you're depriving them of a growing process that could add a lot of depth and meaning and give them something to feel good about. So don't deprive them, bring them in.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the take a shift. I know we have had incidences where, you know, the caregiver had to go into the hospital or was taking a short weekend trip or something like that. And for the family to really see the full impact over 24, 48 hours, it was just so eye-opening for them to better understand what was going on.
Yeah.
And I think the other side of it is, that's part of advanced care planning is what if you fall and break a hip, whatever, who's going to come in and help? Or is there a respite plan for, going to a local facility who might be able to take them for a couple of weeks or whatever the case may be. So definitely.
That's an excellent point. I couldn't agree more. We're human beings. We all get sick. We all have problems. And so you need to circle the wagons and find somebody to be there for you in case you can't.
So we've had several questions that really kind of revolve around disease management in many different aspects, particularly like, night times are so difficult because you need your sleep. The most important basic things. And yet often this is when there are a lot of issues, both in Parkinson's disease and if someone is dementing, where they don't have great sleep patterns or they have to get often at night and need aid. And, what sort of recommendations have you come across in caring for people that kind of address that particular time period?
Yeah, you're right. That is a really hard one because for all of us, if we don't get enough good restful sleep, it really takes a toll. And that's where I've really learned a lot from my colleagues. For example, one thing that happens for some families is that a person needs to get up and use the bathroom a lot. So how can I work with an occupational therapist, for example, to make getting to the toilet or to the commode or to a urinal safe enough so that the person can do it with independence? So an occupational therapist, a physical therapist can be very helpful in those situations. With the sleep itself, if your family member is snoring or really restless and you have not seen a sleep specialist, please make that a priority. Our sleep specialist and our speech therapist, but our sleep specialist can really make a profound difference. And it doesn't always mean CPAP. There are other ways to get a good night's sleep. One of the things you'll learn when you see a sleep specialist is they'll tell you all the things about good sleep hygiene. What I've noticed is really important for my families living with dementia is to get some morning bright light, which sounds a little odd. It sounds like something your grandmother would say, or my grandmother would certainly. But when we are exposed to daylight in the morning, it teaches our brain, okay, this is when I'm supposed to be awake. And then, of course, at nighttime, it's easier to go to sleep because you knew you were awake earlier. So I really encourage people, get outside. I mean, yeah, I know it's cloudy, but get outside a little bit and get some sunshine. Don't drink caffeinated drinks, and do avoid alcohol if you can, because that also affects your sleep architecture. If you like having a glass of wine, several times a week, try going 2 weeks without it and see how it affects your sleep. You'll see an improvement. I could go on and on, but definitely a sleep specialist would probably be part of your team.
Thank you. Yes, we deal with a lot of sleep issues in Parkinson's normally, and there are a lot of things that we can suggest and do, and that both involve, pharmaceutical sort of treatment, a lot of things that don't at all. And so really having on your team a sleep specialist, probably a urologist, and making sure you're talking to your Parkinson's specialist about what's going on and how to approach it. We had a couple questions really talk about, almost a sudden deterioration in cognition, and trying to understand, what's going on, why would that occur, and how best to kind of approach it. And how do you normally kind of look at that when someone comes in and says there's been a sudden
change? That does worry me quite a bit. A change over months and months and years, gradual change, is the pattern that is typical. When somebody changes, when their memory gets worse overnight or over a week or even over a month, that is concerning. And that is definitely something that needs a good workup. It could be an infection, a low-grade pneumonia, for example. It could be a new stroke. It could be delirium. So I'll never forget, one family was really mad at me because the person with dementia agreed to have a colonoscopy, and I didn't tell them that the anesthesia would make him delirious. And I didn't even know that person was happening, or else I would have. But the point is, day surgeries, any kind of hospitalization will cause delirium, and that is an abrupt change. So there's many things that cause an acute change, but whatever it is, it needs a fairly urgent evaluation.
Thank you. Yes, that's some of the most common calls that we get here at the Parkinson Center, is kind of a sudden change either in motor symptoms or cognition.
Yeah.
And one of the first things we suggest is getting a workup with the primary care. Let's rule out
absolutely
an infection that we haven't detected, or did you start a new medication or change medications? There's all kinds of things that are a stress on the body and the brain, and being able to go ahead and move through that and identify that can often take care of the problem if the issue is treated.
Absolutely.
But it can also be an indicator that there are changes occurring, but we need to kind of go through that process and protocol to make sure we're addressing it. And so changes in meds can definitely do that as well.
Definitely.
Well, we are kind of at time here. There's lots more questions we get to. I wish we could have.
Yeah.
There was one quick one I'm hoping you can answer. And that was, Diana asked, what was the advanced care tool? And I'm not sure exactly what she's referring to. Allison, do you remember, or if you can kind of let us know afterwards if you think of it, and we'll pass it on.
Was that in my talk?
I don't know.
Okay. Okay, I'll think about that.
We'll try to get more information for you from Diana.
Okay, that'd be great.
We can get that for everybody. But again, the slides will be available, as will the video. So you can go ahead and see those after the program. They'll be up there on the website for a long time if you want to go back through. And we're happy to, give additional support and care, as we're here for you too. And Allison's given your phone number and email. You should be.
Thank you. And thank you so much for letting me chatter away. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate it, Allison. It's always good to see you, and we do so appreciate your expertise. All right, everyone. I am super excited. This is perfect timing because you have been through kind of a ringer here, hearing about all this stuff and all the difficulties of caregiving when someone's having cognitive changes in Parkinson's disease. And we wanted you to make sure that you were taking care of yourselves. And so Jenny, my colleague, nurse, one of our other nurses here, came up with this idea of the sensory pack, which you've gotten, and she's going to introduce it to you and kind of walk you through how best to use it and what it is and why it is. So I'm really excited to introduce you to Jenny. She's joined us here in the last year. She is a Parkinson's specialist nurse, fast becoming one, and has been able to enhance our services and help for our patients. And so hopefully you'll get to know her much better in the years to come. Jenny, you want to take it away?
Thanks, Lisa. I'm really excited to introduce everyone to this sensory box put together by our amazing education team. A sensory box can help you develop a sensory routine, which is not only a mindfulness tool, but it can help combat emotional dysregulation that might come from trauma or stress. It can also help our brains focus and learn. So in your box, I'm sure you've already found some amazing little treasures. These items will help you connect with your sense of touch, sight, smell, taste, and sound. There's also a guide to doing a sensory walk, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So there's a nice little picture of what you guys all got. So to use your sensory box for the first time, make sure you are in a calm state and have about 10 minutes of uninterrupted time. You're going to explore each of the items in the box for as long as you feel an interest in them. And when you go to use the box again, try to use the items in the same order that you used them before. This will help you develop a sensory routine. This routine can be as short as 3 minutes or as long as you feel like you need it to be. So this box was just to get you started. We're going to provide more detailed information on developing your own sensory routine with sort of your own hand-picked sensory items. That's going to come out to you in an email follow-up after this seminar. So for the sensory walk, you can just follow the prompts on the sheet. But I wanted to point out that you can do a sensory walk pretty much anywhere. You don't have to go very far. It doesn't have to be outside. You can go to a front porch, a small yard. You can even do it in your home. You can do this by touching a house plant, turning on the tap water to hear water trickling, looking out the window to see a bird. A sensory walk doesn't have to take long, just long enough to focus for a few seconds mindfully on each item. So thanks for taking the time to explore different ways to be mindful with us. And I really hope you enjoy this box that we gave you to get you kick-started on this sensory journey. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I'm just having a little bit of a whiff of the wonderful lavender, and I've already gotten into my chocolate. So hopefully everyone else is as well. We're going to take a quick little break so that you can explore your sensory box a little bit more if you'd like, but also get a chance to maybe get something to drink, stretch a little bit. We'll have some slides going here that can give you kind of an idea of what's going on with us, but we'll come back in about 5 minutes, 2 o'clock, and continue with our care partners and the panel. Thank you so much. great team that put together these wonderful gifts for you, and I hope you enjoy them. I just wanted to recognize them and thank them. Wow, that went by quickly, didn't it? I hope you got a chance to take advantage of our little sensory pack. Been coloring. I'm not so good at it, but glad they don't mind if I go outside the lines. So thank you for joining us back. I know you haven't had a lot of time. Deep breath. We're going to have our panel shortly, but right now I want to introduce two of the most amazing experts we have, and that is two wonderful ladies who have cared for their husbands during long years of Parkinson's disease before they passed, and they're going to share with you some of their experience and wisdom. And then we'll come back and they'll join us on the panel with our social worker, Rachel. So go ahead if you'll get the reels going. And I think we have Betty first.
Hi, my name is Ethel Campbell, and I was caregiver to my husband, Ed, who had Parkinson's. Ed lived for almost 20 years after his diagnosis, but once there was a diagnosis of Parkinson's, the next thing was to find out what he could and couldn't do. What did we have control over? What did we not have control over? And that is a learning process. You don't know it right away. As Ed's symptoms progressed, things that he enjoyed couldn't be done the same way. So we did a lot of thinking about how he could change what he was doing, still enjoy the activity, but be safe and probably not incur an injury. He loved to fish, and he had to go from climbing around on rocks and over trees across the water to fishing in a safe place, a level place. Eventually, he even learned to fish from his wheelchair. And as the Parkinson's progressed, this relationship had to change. And I was a little concerned, and my daughters were a little concerned as to whether I was going to be able to become the caregiver, the responsible, the one making decisions and such. Because we all have a great sense of humor, a lot of our mistakes or confusions usually ended up with us laughing. And as long as we could laugh, life wasn't hopeless. We could handle it. And I find that a great help still. Sometimes we would say we shouldn't be laughing, and somebody would say, well, maybe we should cry instead. And we thought, no, probably laughter is better than crying. As his condition became worse and the falls came more frequently and more drastically, that still required a lot of changes and a lot of decisions on my part that I tended to panic about. A new medication, a new trial. Should this happen or should that happen? And I can just remember so frequently being panicked and saying, I have to do this right. I can't make a mistake here. I have to make the right decision. And that is not a pleasant feeling. One time I just remember lying there just panicked. And in my mind, I heard God saying to me, oh, I didn't know you were God. I thought I was. And I realized that no, I was not God. I was human, and there are things I didn't know and things I couldn't control, and those I had to turn over to God. And Ed and I came to a very true decision that we both understood that each of us was doing our best. He was doing the things he had control over. I was doing the things I had control over, and the rest wasn't up to us. And that was, to me, a very freeing situation where I knew I didn't have to be perfect, because I certainly wasn't perfect. One of the things about Parkinson's is that it lives along with the rest of your life. And I would see a change in Ed, and I would either decide that it was Parkinson's or that it wasn't. And then I wouldn't be at all comfortable with the decision I had made. So I would say, don't ever be afraid to ask the doctor if you have a question. One point, he started having vision problems, and I had just recently read an article about Parkinson's and what it does to the eyes. So I immediately decided that Parkinson's was attacking his eyes and there was going to be this problem. But we went to the eye doctor and he needed cataract surgery. And once he had the 2 cataract surgeries, his eyes were just fine. So I could quit worrying about that one. Another time, he lost about 20 pounds in a week. And my immediate conclusion was that he had cancer and was going to kill him, until we went to the doctor and the doctor weighed him and saw this loss and said, I just recently got you on a new medication, didn't I? And he looking up the new medication and he said, yeah, that's one of the possible side effects is significant weight loss. Guess we got to get you off that medication. And it was something that was solvable, but it would not have been solvable if I had been afraid to talk to the doctor about it. Throughout all the years of caregiving with Ed, I found kindness in so many places and from so many people. My family, I expected and was never disappointed in their helpfulness, but so many times I experienced kindness from strangers. I guess I became more aware of what a wonderful thing kindness is. I have a thing on my wall and I've forgotten who the person is that we're quoting, but it says, what greater wisdom is there than kindness?
My name is Betty Cawley. I live in Southern California, and I'm here today to talk about my relationship with my husband over the past 25 years. I wanted to share with you that Bob had Parkinson's for almost 25 years, and I'm going to be focusing on the last 5 of those years today in my talk with you. And also, we were married for almost 55 years. So I've had a long experience with Parkinson's. The first 15 years were pretty easy for having Parkinson's. If Bob was having a good day, I could leave him for about an hour and I would go visit with my friends that we have a set lunch date on a Thursday every week. And so besides being only 5 minutes from the house and Bob being in good shape, I had 2 tools that I really relied on also. And that was, the first one is called the Freedom Alert. And he could push that little button and it would call me. And then if I didn't answer, it would call, I think, 4 more people. And then the second helpful thing was one called the Guardian Alert 911 Plus. I'm sorry, Guardian 911 Alert Plus. And it would call 911 directly. And these were just little boxes that were on a cord and I could put around his neck if I was going out. And usually in his case, I would put the one that said to call me because I was so close to come back if he needed me. Fortunately, he never did. One of the things that came in helpful for both of us, once again, is thank you to the VA. They sent a caregiver that came 4 times a week, 3 hours a day, and he would shower, shave, shampoo, dress, do exercises, discuss sports and who's winning what game, because I'm not a sports person. And he was Bob's social companion as well as a very excellent caregiver. And that helped give me a little bit of free time also. He would also help me with things like if I was having trouble with the computer or light housekeeping or minor repairs. And all of that helped me keep my attitude positive, having somebody to help. My group of lady friends call ourselves a therapy group. We range from sometimes as little as 2 or 3 people to as many as 12 to 15 sometimes. And we usually have lunch for an hour to 3 hours, depending on how much we want to discuss. A few other things that have worked for me personally are support groups, educating myself as much as possible by attending symposiums and reading literature, reading books about it, going online. The VA has lots of special programs. Our VA happens to have a support group. You need to keep getting out and taking care of yourself. Go for a walk with a friend, or go by yourself, or go to the movies after COVID goes away, or go to a craft show, or text your family and friends. So, take care of yourself. That's important. Next subject that I want to cover is, how did I find a way to do the things that we loved? Well, our passion was traveling. So how did I find a way to do the things that we loved? Well, when Bob first got diagnosed, we started planning our holidays early after the diagnosis, because we decided what we would do is take the more challenging trips while Bob was in good condition, because you never knew when he wasn't going to be. And that's true for all of us. So we had traveled extensively for about 15 years, going to Europe and Britain and the British Isles and South America, and the Caribbean and Puerto Rico, and lots of our states, including California and other places. And then we decided that when he got worse, we would take trips by cruise ships, because the cruise ships have handicap facilities, and I don't know if they're all the same, but the ones that we took were outstanding. But we did have all of those memories to reminisce about and talk about, to back up and go to challenges and solutions. The first I talked about, or am talking about, is switching to more friendly clothes for dressing. For instance, pardon me, we would get pants and shorts with elastic waistbands, so we didn't have to deal with the zippers. We got polo and t-shirts to slip over his head with no buttons. He had a very nice black tracksuit that he wore if we were going to go out to dinner or to some other event where he had to look presentable. Shoes we got at Big Five and Cole Haan, because they have, well, I don't know about Cole Haan now, but they used to have a nice pair of shoes with a Velcro strap. And socks were replaced by elastic stockings because he had a blood pressure problem. So let's see. Oh, jackets. Yes, he had lots of different jackets because he was chilly a lot of the time. And I'll talk about that just a little bit more down the road. I have one hint. If your doctor recommends that you keep the temperature up when it's cold and down when it's warm, with the proper paperwork that the doctor would complete, you can get the utility company to give you a medical rate for your air and for your heat. Next is bathing. When Bob began falling, when I was getting him in and out of the shower, I touched bases with the Veterans Administration, which he did go to for his Parkinson's over quite a number of years. And when he began falling, I called them, I talked to them, and they sent someone out to the house who went through the whole house and see what we needed where. And they put in a driveway because it was cracked and I couldn't get the chair over it. They put in ramps because I couldn't get the wheelchair in and out of the house. In the bathroom, they put a special chair that worked as a commode, and when he needed a shower, he just sat there and then it would slide over into the shower. So that, all of these things, for the most part, when I mention them, do come from the VA. And if your husband or wife is a qualified veteran, they may qualify for these for free. Mobility and falls. At the end of the toward the end of the Parkinson's, the last 5 years, I kept debating about whether to get a van with a wheelchair ramp. And those are so expensive. They run about $30,000 and up. And here again, the VA stepped up and offered to do the conversion, but we would have to buy the van and they would pay $25,000 additional to have it converted. There's one other piece of equipment that helps that I want to tell you about. But in my case, my brother and his wife bought it for me. It's my birthday present for the next 100 years. And it's called a Hoyer lift, or it does have other brand names. But it's a lift that has a movable swing. And it also has you can attach the swing to the frame. And then there's an electric motor that helps you pick your Parkinson's person up, or you can get them off the floor, you can get them out of bed, you can put them into a chair, you can move them into their wheelchair, all with this piece of equipment, and you don't have to be doing it yourself. To close, I'd like to share with you a thought that I read recently that will, I hope, help keep your spirits up. To love someone deeply gives you strength. Being loved by someone deeply gives you courage. And I wish the best of both of those for all of you. Thank you.
Wonderful words of wisdom from both of our expert caregivers. And now I'm going to introduce you to our panel, both of our caregivers who you just watched, but also our social worker, who I'm going to start with first. Rachel Rushing is our new social worker at the OHSU Parkinson Center and Neurology Department. She's been a social worker for 20 years and came to us from OHSU inpatient in neurology. So she's got kind of hit the ground running here in the last couple months and has been a great addition to our team. Her focus has primarily been on helping the older adult population throughout her career. And she really strives to give patients and their families, tools and resources that they can be successful with, considering the challenges they're facing. And that can be adjustment to the disease, caregiver burnout, insurance issues, disability and forms and Social Security disability and things like that, long-term care, all the way to end-of-life issues and people going on hospice. It's kind of fun. She lives in Oregon, has for the last 18 years. And a little insight into who she is, she enjoys hiking, riding her new electric bike, and watching football. But she's got 2 teenage children who, if we asked them to describe her, would say that she has the all-time favorite holiday of April Fool's Day, which is actually the first time I've ever heard that for anybody as the pick of a holiday. So she's a little bit of a prankster, and so far she hasn't done any pranks on us here at the OHSU Parkinson Center, but I think that's thanks to the pandemic. So we'll look forward to that in the future. I also want to introduce to you someone now you already probably know much better than I do, which is Betty Cawley, who came to us originally from Indianapolis, Indiana. She was born there many years ago and now lives in California. But she was married to Bob for 55 years, and they dealt with Parkinson's disease together for 25 of those years. She's retired as a financial planner and has just, shared with you, I think, some such important things to consider for what they have been through in their journey. So we really appreciate her being open to that. And she's been a part of other events, and not with us. She's new to us, so we're very glad to have her, but with the National Parkinson's Foundation, and has been very involved in Parkinson's disease and helping other caregivers. And then I also want to introduce you to, my all-time favorite caregiver, Ethel Campbell. Ethel is very sweet to us because she's been volunteering at the center for several years after Ed passed. They were married 57 years, and 20 years of that they dealt with Parkinson's. But she's also provided care for her 3 older sisters. And she was in her mid-50s working full-time, enrolled in college classes, and earned an organizational communication degree, and has been volunteering for 29 years as an adult ESL tutor and book club leader. So she's like an overachiever in many different ways. But really, we love her because of her sweetness and availability to always just kind of support us and be a little bit of a pseudo grandmother, if you don't mind me saying, Ethel, for our program. So glad to see you again. It's been a while. All right. Wow. We have so many amazing questions. Once again, and some of the ones that were being asked earlier of Allison, I really kind of wanted to bring into this group because they pertain to their various areas of expertise. So I wanted to start out first because a lot of the questions we got for our panel were about self-care and this challenge of taking care of oneself when there are just some overwhelming aspects of caregiving that you have to do for your loved one. And so I'm going to first ask if Betty wouldn't mind addressing that and how she found ways to maybe care for herself, or just your reflections on that.
I think as far as caring for myself, I realized I'm very much a participator. So we had a Parkinson support group that met every week, all year long, except for, of course, Thanksgiving and so forth. So informing yourself about Parkinson's can be a great help in letting you manage your self-care, I feel. And a thing that Dr. Lindbauer mentioned at the beginning was having a friend who could, not just one friend, but however many would make you comfortable, but someone that you could call upon if you needed help. And as it just so happens, my husband and I were in Cabo San Lucas when I came down with an illness that was killing me. We were on a cruise ship, and it was just an immediate overnight thing that happened to me. And my husband, he wasn't restricted to the wheelchair at that time, but he was not capable of making decisions. And so, I really caught on to that thing of having someone, because my girlfriend here in the United States could call the people in Mexico and talk to them and find out what was going on. And to this day, could probably tell you more about what happened than I could. But it was very serious, and it was very great to have a friend. And there are other friends, they've been prepared, but this particular friend is very close and knew about our circumstances. So that's an important thing I wanted to get out there, but taking care of yourself is most important, and you absolutely have to do that. You've got to take care of your health, because if you're not around, who's going to take care of that person? In our case, we had a lot of long-term care insurance, and my husband could have gone there, but he, in our opinion, because we discussed this, didn't want to or need to go. But I will say I did have a caregiver. So that made a huge difference. Only 3 hours a day for 4 days a week. But believe me, that was wonderful. So try to do things for yourself to keep yourself going.
Thank you, Betty. Ethel, what about you?
I was very, very fortunate in having adult daughters and two really great sons-in-law and a granddaughter who were right there, always ready to help me. And they had different talents, different abilities. One daughter was able to find a van with a wheelchair lift, which made getting Ed around so much easier for me. The other daughter got hold of the physical therapy program at Pacific University and arranged for senior physical therapy students to come and work with my husband. And I also at the same time had a sister in the same care center. There was always somebody available or to make phone calls for me, to do some research. I had so much family help that I guess I never really felt like I needed me time. I felt like I had plenty. And I always had a wonderful backup team.
Rachel, can you kind of comment on just that, the concept of, how there might be resources and determining, how to care for yourself and take advantage of what may be there?
Yeah, for sure. Everything that's been shared so far really makes me think of this metaphor. We've all been in airplanes, and when they're going through the safety features, they tell us to put our oxygen mask on first before helping someone else out. And I just think that just is totally true when it comes to caregiving. You have to take care of yourself. You have to be healthy. You have to be in a good space to provide great care. I also hear a lot of advice given to caregivers from friends. Go take a trip. You need to get out of town. Go to the beach. Go get a massage. Sometimes those things can seem quite unattainable. That's a lot of time away and a lot of preparation you have to do ahead of time. There's often a great cost to those things. So I always like to suggest just smaller day-to-day things that bring joy to you. Maybe it's just listening to a podcast of something you're really interested in, or your favorite band while you're doing the dishes or folding laundry, taking a bath. Spring is around the corner, even planting a few flowers or plants to start taking care of. Just the little things that can bring us joy mean a whole lot to our self-care as well. And like Betty and Ethel said, just staying connected, staying educated. The Parkinson's Resource of Oregon has so many resources and ways to connect. Their website is a wonderful tool to get started.
Thank you so much. I wonder if our panel can comment a little bit on how to deal with cognitive changes in your loved one, whether that was your experience or whether you had friends and other care partners that you worked with over the years that experienced it. And then kind of when I punt to Rachel, it'll be more along the lines of what you've seen in your experience of how you can help people with caregivers that encounter this. So I'm going to go first to Ethel, if she doesn't mind, and tell us a little bit about your experience.
Okay. I think the biggest change in Ed's cognitive abilities was the future issues, what was going to happen. I could tell him something that was going to be happening 3 days from now, and he immediately started worrying about it. And what's it time? Whatever. I finally, and this was toward the last few years, I finally decided on a whiteboard that he could see at all times. And if I was going to be gone, I would write down where I was and what time I would be back, or if he had an appointment, when it was. And somehow seeing it written and being able to look at it over and over, or have a caregiver point it out to him that this is what Ethel said on the whiteboard, was comforting to him, and it eased me and other caregivers having to always tell him the same thing over and over. See, hear what she wrote. That whiteboard was a wonderful help to me dealing with that.
Great idea. Betty, how about you?
Well, Bob did have mild dementia, but it was extremely mild. Fortunately, thank you, Lord. So that I really didn't have that to deal with. But I would say that he took, I'm sorry, I'm not prepared with the names of the drugs right now, but the drugs that help prevent or slow the dementia. He had been taking those for 20 years. Just about somewhere between 15 and 20 years. And so perhaps that's the reason his forgetfulness was the same as where did I put my car keys? What aisle did I park in when I came out of Costco? That sort of thing. So I want to assure people that everybody's not going to have strong dementia, but it may happen. So I think it's great that people can share ideas to help you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rachel.
I think with cognitive decline, the hardest part is separating the disease from the individual. And behaviors, challenges, repetitive questions, forgetting things are not the person that we know and love, and it can be hard to see that happen. And so just making a conscious effort of understanding that this is the disease, this is the process of the disease, is one way to kind of reframe those things. But also just, again, staying connected. You're not alone. You're not the only one going through these difficult times. It's helpful to be a part of support groups where you can share your experiences, have others learn from you if you found strategies or ways to improve things, and also to learn from other group members too who are going through the same thing.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Yes, I just want to kind of emphasize that from what our panelists have shared, the whiteboard idea is wonderful. We usually do recommend this for a lot of our patients that are and caregiver teams when they're going through changes in cognition. So there's a central part to share information, and Ethel illustrated that beautifully. We also would recommend, getting referrals to a speech language pathologist or an occupational therapist. Both deal with cognitive rehab issues and coming up with tips and kind of tricks, both for the patient and for the caregiver, to help in communication and cueing. And the occupational therapist tends to focus more on, things that might be functional, like doing activities of daily living and how to work through a particular process for that. And the speech language pathologist takes it more from a communication viewpoint and executive function and planning. And the idea about staying connected, we're very, very fortunate here in the Portland community and in Oregon as well, the Northwest, to have great organizations such as the Parkinson's Resources of Oregon that organizes many support groups, and there are caregiver support groups. Also, most things are right now online, so you can connect in that respect. And hopefully we'll have opportunities to do it in other fashions soon. But there are a lot of resources out there to stay connected and to kind of get your questions answered. But again, bring it up to your specialists. If we can do some additional referrals, we want to be able to do that for you. So one of the questions that came up that I thought was kind of interesting and is still within this notion of, there are cognitive changes that have occurred, but it can also be expanded a little bit more to look at just this issue in Parkinson's. And that is, traveling with Parkinson's disease, and particularly if there might be cognitive things, you're changing environments and things like that. But also Parkinson's is a really challenging disease for movement and having to be in new places and figure things out when you're not in your home environment or in your normal routines. So I was wondering if maybe our panelists could comment on that. And Betty, you mentioned traveling. So what was your experience?
Well, that was our thing, is traveling. And so we were determined to keep on doing it till the end. In fact, very early in my husband's diagnosis, we decided that we would do what we call the difficult trips first, like the third world countries and so forth. And that we would save cruising for when we got into wheelchairs and we weren't as mobile. And we would go from there. And that's what we did. And we kept right on traveling. And I will say, for people who are reluctant, if you go ahead and just do it, you'll be amazed that because travel was our primary thing that we both love to do. I think that it helped keep Bob's spirits up and keep him going, because there was always something that we had that we wanted to look forward to. And so, and you will find that airlines and cruise ships are extremely accommodating, at least in my experience. They did all kinds of great things to get Bob onto those airplanes, little chairs that go down the middle of the aisle, and special ramps that wheelchairs can come up to the airplane. And on cruise ships, they give you these gigantic rooms with all the bars and so forth. It's really, I would say, something you could really look forward to. One particular experience I wanted to share was accidents do happen, and they will happen. And we were in New Zealand. My husband is a fisherman, and I dropped him off and I said, "Don't move from this spot. You can fish right here, and I'm going to go do the laundry." Well, when I came back from doing the laundry, there was an ambulance, and I thought, "Oh, I wonder what he's done now." And so he had fallen over the side of the embankment, not where he was supposed to be, of course. And there were people doing the human chain to pull him back up, because 100 feet down the way was a dam that was open and running. And so he would have gone, but fortunately he was safe. And in the newspaper in the area where we were staying, they said, "Elderly tourist rescued in river." And he said, "Did they have to say elderly?" So there's that one. And another one I'll throw in about fly fishing, because that was his passion, was fly fishing. And we got to where I could cast better than he could. So I would cast it and he would bring the fish in. And he had the skill at catching the fish, and I could do the pull. But if your husband likes, or wife likes to fish, fly fish in particular, there is a vest that you can go to the boating stores and get. It's a flat vest. So you put it on, it's just like wearing a little jacket. And if you accidentally fall in the water or get water on you, it automatically inflates. It turns you over so you're face up and your feet are forward, so you're not going to drown. And so that was a I don't know how I came upon that other than just keep, like Ethel, you keep searching for the answers and they show up.
Mhm.
So that's kind of in a nutshell. You
That's
know?
quite a story. I'm glad you
have a
didn't
few
go
of
over the
those.
dam. So, wow. So Ethel, what about you? Did you and Ed travel, and how did you approach them?
Yes, we loved to travel, didn't have a lot of money. And so before Parkinson's, he would quite often suggest a trip and I would think, maybe we shouldn't do that this year. Maybe we should wait. Once he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, that went totally out the window. So we did a lot of traveling the first few years of his diagnosis. Later, I have a couple of stories that weren't so successful, and that is finding a men's bathroom and not finding him. 2 times I have had to go ask permission to go into a men's bathroom because I could not find my husband. One time was successful, and the other time I had seen him go into the bathroom and he was not there. I had not, some way he had slipped out of that bathroom and I didn't see him leave. And I ended up walking all over Indian reservation casino trying to find him. And I finally found somebody. He said, "Are you looking for a man? I've seen one. He's fallen down 3 times. I've helped him." And by the time I found him, I was crying and tired and lost because I can't find myself directionally very well. I couldn't find the car. And it was probably one of the most helpless feelings I have ever had.
Mhm.
I think after that, maybe I just stood by the bathroom door always. So this would never happen again. But that was one of the things that, 3 weeks later I could laugh about, but I wasn't laughing that day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And did it kind of, so it changed how you did things in the future?
Oh, yeah.
So kind of just the idea of trying to think of situations and planning ahead for those, and kind of hopefully having backup plans maybe for what may occur could help ease the stress of a caregiver who's traveling with someone, whether it's just Parkinson's or if they also have cognitive changes, which a lot of times you do need a more advanced planning and explanation to the individual as they're in unfamiliar environments.
Yeah, at some places, at least while he was using a walker or a wheelchair, I was able to say, my husband needs a bathroom and I may need some help here. Mm-hmm. But it also did serve to limit where we went, and so it was a limiting factor. I can remember my son-in-law helping me one time, and he was just aghast that I would have ever tried to tackle this by myself. Well, yes, I did. And we're both alive. We're both still alive, so I guess it was okay. But that was one of the real difficulties as far as traveling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And Rachel, have you had experience with this when couples want to travel? And we encourage them to do things and keep it active in life, but these are special challenges, especially if they're starting to be changes in thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ethel and Betty have brought up some really great examples. The only things that I would have to add is, just doing research ahead of time, making sure you know where the local hospital is, where you can get medical help if you need to. There's also in-home care agencies that you can hire a caregiver to go with you if if there are greater care needs, having that travel companion who could easily go into the bathroom, help out with things in the mornings, bedtime routines, those types of things as well. So there are resources out there for travel.
Great, thank you. And I know also, like on the Parkinson Foundation website, there's an article on travel, and I think there's also a webinar. So there are tips out there, and often our fellow caregivers and fellow patients or Parkinson's friends have ideas, just as our panelists do here today. So make sure you take advantage of them. And then there's a great question here, and that's, how do you keep your spirits up, and where do you find joy amongst all these challenges and that go along with caring for someone with a progressive disease? And I'll throw it out first to Betty, if you don't mind.
Would you repeat the first part again?
Yes. How do you keep your spirits up and find joy?
I think finding joy for me was in just having my husband for another day. I said something at the end of my notes that I'll share with you. It's to love someone deeply gives you strength. Being loved by someone deeply gives you courage. And I think that was the relationship that we had, is that I never resented having to take care of Bob, but I also just looked at it as this is part of what life is. This is what you're going to do. As far as let's see, what was I forgot the first part again. Boy,
sorry. It's the keeping your spirits up.
I'm a naturally very optimistic person. Not to say that I don't get down, not to say that I haven't yelled at my dear husband a time or two. So when those things happen, usually if I yell at him, it was my fault. Like I was trying to help get him into bed, for example, and it was more than I could do. So he ends up on the floor and I have to call the paramedics. Well, I could get aggravated about that, but it's not going to do any good. So I apologize. I say I'm going to call the paramedics, and we're up and off to the next thing that we're going to have to deal with. So I think, and back to the taking time for yourself, boy, you've really got to do that. Even with the caregiver, I only had an hour maximum of free time in between the treatments that he had for inhalation and the medicines that he took. So even with the caregiver there, unless I was going to do something in the house, I didn't have a lot of free time. But you had to learn to take advantage and use of what you do have. So hope that helps.
Thank you. Yes. Ethel?
I'd just like to add a little bit. Ed and I love to be together, and I learned to fish as his fishing abilities got it was a little harder. He had to learn to fish more safely. No more climbing on the rocks, no more doing this. But we very early agreed that we were a team and that we were both doing our very best. And neither one of us expected perfection out of the other. And it just seemed like even the more difficult things got, the more we understood the need to work together and appreciate what the other one was doing. And it didn't always go real smoothly, but generally our value system was the same, that we knew we loved each other. We knew we were trying the best for each other, and our best was okay.
Thank you. Rachel, did you have anything else you wanted to?
Yeah, sure, I'll add a little. I read a book once called Cutting for Stone. I don't recall the author right off the bat, but a doctor in the book asked his trainees, what medications do you administer by ear? And the answer is words of encouragement. And I hear that in Betty and Ethel's stories. I see that in support groups, and just to continue to experience joy and to stay uplifted, just to continue to encourage one another, encourage each other, you and your partner. And yeah, Betty and Ethel are great examples of just that.
Perfect. Thank you. I did kind of want to address, and Betty kind of alluded to it a little bit. So maybe I'll go to you, Ethel. Did you ever get frustrated with Ed? And how did you handle that? Because it's easy when you're, to get kind of pent up. I mean, even in normal marriage, let alone dealing with a progressive neurodegenerative disease like Parkinson's.
I guess one of the frustrating things that I understood was that he didn't know he couldn't do something. And it seemed like, at least with him with Parkinson's, he could be feeling absolutely perfectly okay, and 10 minutes later, not good. Like he early on would insist that he didn't need the walker to go to the grocery store. He was just fine. And then we'd be there and all of a sudden his legs were not holding him up. And I wanted to shout at him about, I never want to hear you again say that you don't need a walker. I only actually established a rule when, if you can imagine going to the Black Friday sale at 5:30 in the morning. And he loved to do this. He loved to go to these. And I was checking something out. I turned around and he was gone. And 25 minutes, one of the employees and I walked around trying to find him, and finally found him outside. Anyway, I just simply flat out said, no more Black Friday sales. We're not going there ever again. And he said, okay.
Yes, that's definitely a challenging time to go to the store. So, Betty, did you have any additional comments you wanted to make?
Oh, just for us, that was sort of solved for me by the doctor when he said, you can't travel anymore. So I didn't have to say it. The doctor said, that's it.
Yeah, it's important to partner with your care team and the healthcare providers. We had some people ask about, the decision to kind of move, needing additional care, like moving into assisted living or getting support in that way. Does anyone want to comment on that? Did you deal with that in any way?
Yes, Bob and I, before he got to where he was even in a wheelchair, so a good 10, 15 years, well, more like 15 to 12 years ago, we started looking to find a facility that would take both of us, because he did not want to go into someplace on his own. And so we started checking facilities out, and we have for me still, excellent long-term care policies. And we got them before his Parkinson's diagnosis. So he could have gone, but what we found is that they don't always take your long-term care insurance. And so that was a problem that we ran into. And as I said, we decided that he would stay at home as long as possible. And he did. He passed away we were taking our very first day to enjoy going out to eat in between COVIDs. It was when we had a low ratio down here. And so we were going to go out to have lunch with good friends, and the three of us were trying to get him in the car and having a terrible time, and he just went. So it was, and this was an extremely close dear friend of mine. Mm-hmm. So it helped that they were here to support me. And, you know, they had been through this before too with their own loved ones. So, yeah, so that was again, keep your circle of friends open. You never know which one's going to help you with what.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Ethel, did you have to broach that with Ed?
With sort of yes and no. As he was falling more and more, and a couple times as I was trying to keep him from falling, we both fell. Particularly my son-in-law said, "Mom, you can't keep on doing this. You're gonna have to get some help." Well, we tried Caregiver, and the first night that she was going to stay all night and I was going to be clear, far, far away so I could sleep all night, I heard a crash, and then the next thing I heard was, "Oh my gosh, you split your head open." And Ed had not wanted to disturb her when he needed to go to the bathroom. Obviously, the idea of caregiver was not my idea of caregiver. Anyway, I can remember jumping up. He had tried to go to the bathroom by himself because he didn't want to disturb the caregiver, and he had put a big gash in his head. Probably 3 days before that, when my son-in-law had said, "You can't keep on," I had lain in bed and I had said, "God, I need to know when it's time to make a change." Later on, I said, "God, that was not quite how I expected this change to happen. I wanted a piece of paper that said, this is what you need to do and when you need to do it." And all I can remember about that horrible night is that I couldn't find my shoes to go in the ambulance with him. But I didn't have to make the decision. The surgeon in the emergency room said, "You won't be taking him home." Mm-hmm. But I do think that having to explain that to him later on after hospitalization and rehab, that he couldn't go home, was probably the hardest decision. And knowing how much he wanted to be home and how he always wanted to go back home was really rough. One of the things where I got advice both ways was, "We'll let him go home once in a while." And others said, "Don't get that started again. You know, don't." And that was a really, really hard thing because I kept getting advice both ways and I wasn't sure what was right. And I finally just had to come to the decision that if I let him come home for a day or so and had to take him back, I emotionally could not handle that re-entry to the care center. And that was when I finally just said to myself, you are not able to do this, so just don't even think about doing it.
Well, thank you very much. You know, it's so apparent, and we do know this, and Rachel particularly knows this as well too, and all the caregivers that you deal with. There's so much emotion and grief that we have to deal with as this disease progresses and as we face the various hurdles that we have to go through for making sure that we are caring for our loved one, keeping them safe, keeping ourselves healthy, and you know, how to overcome whatever challenge may be placed before us. And sometimes we don't have the opportunity to plan ahead. And things happen, circumstances happen, as Betty and Ethel have shared with us. So I just do want to encourage people as we kind of wrap up today that, do take advantage of connecting with other caregivers, connecting or asking for a referral to a social worker like Rachel, who can help you navigate the planning stages or navigate just the emotional impact. And make sure that you're sharing with your Parkinson neurologist or whoever is caring for your loved one. If they don't ask, help them understand where you're at physically and emotionally and psychologically, so that they start to take that into account for planning how to care for your loved one in the best way possible that includes you, because you are vital and are the ones that make all the difference in the world to the one you love, and they to you, but also in how well they're going to do over time. I wish we had a lot more time to talk and to share the wisdom of everyone here. I'm sorry we have run out of time. There's still wonderful questions out there, such as, how to motivate someone when they're not feeling like doing their exercises, or questions around intimacy in Parkinson's disease. And I would just want to encourage you to check out our website and the video library that we have for past presentations. For example, we have one with Sheila Silver, who talked about intimacy and sexuality in Parkinson's disease. And we've got other ones about the disease process and how to get team referrals and things like that, to be able to make sure you have a team around yourselves, not just the person with Parkinson's disease. And of course, there's other resources out there with the Parkinson Foundation. They have lots of webinars. American Parkinson's Disease Association has a wonderful website too. And then our local organizations like the Brian Grant Foundation and the Parkinson Resources of Oregon are all there to support you, as we are. And so hopefully today has been, well, maybe, a little overwhelming and challenging, educational, so that you can start to adjust and plan for what your situation may look like, and how to take some of the ideas for self-care or for support in other areas, and maybe make them something that you can take advantage of and implement. And hopefully you will take advantage of the sensory pack that was put together so beautifully by our team. Make sure you do get a little self-care time with that. And I just want to finally thank our panelists once again, and thank our speaker, Allison, for having been part of this program today. Your wisdom, your words are invaluable. Thank you very much. And also thank you to our organizing team. Jen Carpenter, who's our education coordinator, brings everything together. Jenny, who helped us introduce the sensory pack to you and came up with the idea to start. And we have Jolene in the background, who's been feeding your questions to us, as well as Ethel, who of the three of them, Ethel and Jolene and Jen, put together the packets and got them out to you. And I think this has been an opportunity for us to kind of, in this unfortunate COVID world, hopefully focus on some of the issues that you're dealing with and help you know that you're not alone. And if we can help support you, and we hope we have that opportunity to do so. And again, make a little bit of time at the end today to take advantage of your sensory pack. Also, fill out the evaluation when it comes. It helps us determine future topics and how we can support you educationally. And then just take care of yourselves. I know it's a big order and I know it's hard to do, but it is so important. So we're going to sign off now, but we do want to thank you for all the love and care that you give your loved one. You are our heroes. And we just want to thank you for being with us today and hope you stay safe, stay well, and stay positive. God bless you.